we're 1 minute past the hour, so we will go ahead and get started. We don't have a large group on the line, so we'll do quick introductions. I am Jamie Ranke. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the division manager of floodplain management here at DNR. And I have with me Deanna. You can introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Deanna Ringenberg. I'm an engineer here with the Department of Natural Resources. I've done a lot of the mapping for this area, and I will be doing some of the mapping.
Michelle, you want to go?
Hi, I'm Michelle York, and I am the administrative assistant for floodplain, and I believe most everybody here has received just all sorts of communications from me.
And Elijah.
Hello, I am Elijah Kaufman. I'm the state National Flood Insurance Program coordinator, and I'm here to help you once we move into the mapping process with understanding what the floodplain maps mean for you and your regulations. So happy to answer any questions that you have.
Okay, and it looks like we have FEMA on the phone today. Dawn, do you want to go ahead and do a quick intro?
Hi, yeah, this is Dawn Livingston with FEMA Region 7, project officer for CTP. Not normally the project officer for Nebraska. However, David Ard is on leave today, so I am taking this meeting on his behalf.
Well, thank you for attending for us. Okay, and then I'll just go through the list. Daniel Wendt. You are muted if you're speaking. Okay, we'll move on to Tyler.
Hey, see me?
Yep.
Tyler White, Lower Big Blue NRD Assistant Manager.
Okay, thanks for joining us. Hunter?
Let me see here. Yep, I'm here. I'm the flood manager for DeWitt here.
All right, thank you. And James?
James Burrows, City Engineer and Floodplain Administrator for the City of Beatrice.
All right. And it looks like Daniel was able to come off mute.
Hi, I'm Dan Wendt, Floodplain Administrator for the Township of Adams.
Okay, perfect. And then Jason Dayton just joined us too. Jason, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself real quick?
Yep, I'm Jason Dayton with Nebraska DOT.
Okay, thank you all for taking the time to meet with us today. As you know, we have a project going on in the Middle Big Blue Huck 8 watershed. So this meeting officially kicks off phase 2 of that work, which is the lower portion. We did the upper piece in Seward County, the northern part, last year. And this is going to move into new regulatory products for Gage County. We also had a project last year in the Turkey watershed that will result in new firm panels for Saline and Fillmore County too. But this one is primarily for Gage County. Now, we have a presentation because it's really awkward to have a virtual meeting without having something to talk from, but feel free to interject with questions or anything that you'd like to know more about. We tried to tone down the amount of technical information that's in here and stick to the things that we feel like are most important for the communities to be aware of. But if we missed anything, feel free to shout out anything that you need. So the first thing, the anticipated timeline for the project. This watershed went through discovery in 2019. And for those of you who have been around for a little while, you probably remember that we did have a project sequenced in the watershed earlier after the 2019 floods and some other things that were going on. We had to pause that project and we are just getting started now again. So we're in what's called the data development phase. And that's where we do all of the engineering studies for the maps, the hydrology, hydraulics, and developing the floodplain boundaries. The touch points with communities are the boxes that are in yellow, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of them as we move into the presentation more. The engineering methods comment period, which will kick off shortly after this meeting, you will be getting a letter if you are representing a community, and you will have 30 days to provide any comments on the engineering methodology that we're using. The letter is a FEMA letterhead letter, so it's a couple pages long too, and it can be a little bit confusing. So if you have any questions, just reach out to our office and we can walk you through anything on the letter. And you'll probably get it starting later this week or next week, would be my guess. Once we get to the end of the data development phase where we have floodplain boundaries, we have flood risk products, we'll host that information on our interactive map and we'll host what's called the flood risk review meeting. We anticipate that to be about a year from now. And with that meeting, then we also open up a 30-day comment period for everyone to look at the boundaries, to review any of the data that we've prepared for FEMA and provide any comments that you have. That is a very important comment period because that is before we get into the regulatory process, and you can comment on things, we can look into them, we can address issues with the mapping because we haven't gotten into the regulatory phase. Once we get into the preliminary mapping, we lose the ability to be able to change anything because we've entered into that official process following steps that are outlined in the Code of Federal Regulations. So please, 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 if you take nothing from this meeting other than review the boundaries when they're done about a year from now. But we will be communicating with you regularly so you'll know when that is coming up. We have projected to fund the preliminary phase in fiscal year 2026. So that would be the fall of 26 with a preliminary issuance sometime in about a year after that in 2027. And then by the time we get through the post-preliminary process, it'll be roughly summer 2029. We're hoping maybe it can be a little bit sooner than that, but this should be a fairly conservative estimate, but it is hinging on getting funding in FY 2026 to move that forward. If that changes, we will let you know though. Okay, so the project, of course, like every mapping project that we have, we will be updating all of the Zone A areas and the enhanced study areas. This map shows in blue all of the Zone A studies for Gage County that will be updated. In Beatrice, we have enhanced studies that have floodways that will be redone for the Big Blue, Indian Creek, Crystal Creek, and Duesenberry Creek is what we're calling it, and unnamed tributary 44. So the three little tributaries on the south end, James, if I remember right, you had indicated that you wanted floodway on those. So we've added those to the project scope, but we may have a quick email chain with you so that we know where you want those to end. If you want us to go all the way on the tributaries, we can, or we can cut it off somewhere that makes sense for what your planning looks like for the city. But keep in mind that anywhere that we add floodway on the map now, it's going to stay floodway anytime that the map gets updated in the future. So that's one thing we wanted to point out. DeWitt, you will have Turkey Creek and the Big Blue River like you have now. Blue Springs and Wymore will have the Big Blue River, and Barneston will have their little piece of the Big Blue River too. So after this meeting, we start sending you quarterly project updates, and it'll highlight where we're at in the process. It's usually just a quick little one-page summary of where we're at and where we're projected to go the next quarter. If you have questions, you can always reach out to someone on our team, whether it's at a quarter reporting time or any time in between. We're always here and happy to help. So reach out if you have anything, but do expect to start getting emails. To go through a little bit of what this mapping project is going to look like, DNR has, in agreement with Region 7, switched over to do 2D modeling for all of our studies moving forward. So we're using the latest and greatest technology. Our basic hydrology is going to be conducted using HEC-RAS, rain on grid. And just as warning, it will show more areas of flooding, but will more accurately represent flood risk. And there are some things that we will do during the mapping phase to clean up some of the shallow areas of ponding that are caught because of the precipitation on LiDAR. For the enhanced hydrology, we're using gauge analysis for the Big Blue River and Turkey Creek, I believe, regression analysis, and existing FIS flows. Those are all used for the rain on grid piece to make sure that we're calibrating to something. So where we have gauge data, we'll use gauge data as best available to do calibration. Where we don't have that, we're using regression. And then the enhanced studies will compare to the existing FIS flows. So for those studies that we had shown for Beatrice, DeWitt, Blue Springs, and Barnston, we'll do new hydrology. The Big Blue River is again going to be based on the gauge analysis, but all of those smaller tribs will use HEC-HMS to develop a hydrograph. All of the studies will compute flows for the 10%, 4%, 2%, 1%, 1% plus, and the 0.2% annual chance flows, and they'll be listed in the flood insurance study. Since this is a two-dimensional modeling study, some of the FIS documents are going to look a little bit different, and we won't have a profile anymore. So as we move through the project, we'll be communicating with you on how this is going to look a little bit different and be a little bit different to use. For hydraulics, we're using 2D HEC-RAS models for all of the basic and enhanced areas. The only difference between them now will be for the zone A that feed into the AE, we'll be using that rain on grid, but we'll be using the gauge or hydrograph information from HMS for main stem. They're both going to use LiDAR. In the enhanced areas, we will be supplementing LiDAR with survey data for flow lines and bridges, primarily bridges, culverts, or any other structures that need to be in the model. And then, of course, floodways will be developed for the enhanced study streams, not for the basic studies. We can also incorporate valid data that's provided to us by you. If there's anything that you have that might be helpful for us, like if there's development that's underway that might not have been captured in the LiDAR data, and you have survey information or as-built plans or something like that, we can certainly take a look at it and see if we can incorporate it in. Now is the time to provide that information to us, since we're just getting started on the basic studies. So please be in contact with us if you have anything to provide. And then this is a snapshot of what the model will look like. You'll have a grid in the background instead of those cross sections that we're used to seeing. The bridge data is shown, but you're basically looking at a LiDAR mesh that has elevation data in every cell within the model. So it's pretty accurate and can show really accurate floodplain boundaries. And we're pretty excited about it because there are some other products that can be useful to communities. We can get velocity information, depth grids, and some of that easier than we were able to with the 1D.
Jamie, this is James. Question. So, in the next, what it would be, let's see, this is 25. So 4 years, we've been in contact with NDOT regarding the two bridges.
Mhm.
So both of the big, one's on West Court Street and one is on South Highway 77.
Okay.
My understanding, both those bridges are looking at being replaced within the next 4 years. Like one of them is slated, I believe, in 29.
Okay.
which would be West Court Street Bridge, and maybe the South Highway 77 bridge might be part of that 28 project. And I'm just wondering, does the two entities talk? I mean, has the state talk with you all about that? And do those new bridges get accounted for? Is their floodway openings going to change, which affects the floodplain? I just was wondering how that takes place.
No, that's a really good point. And we don't always get information on what bridges are being replaced, but we should maybe be doing a better job of reaching out to DOT to collect that information in our enhanced study areas. Depending on the timing of their projects, we might be able to slip in the new data. The real issue will just be when construction is complete because we can't show anything on the map that isn't already built or won't be built. I know we were able to sneak in the Wahoo bypass as construction was being completed for that mapping project. So, Jason, maybe I'll follow up with you after this meeting and we can talk through what the schedules look like so we can figure out a way to make sure that we're keeping the maps up to date as they're going through the regulatory process, because I would hate to have a map that gets published with outdated bridge data.
Yes, that would be good. Thanks. And James, thanks for bringing that point up too. That's kind of why NDOT was tuned into this meeting as well. Thanks.
Yeah, and we will for sure have the modeling data to a point that we can share with DOT, so that you can do your no rise and whatever using both models. I mean, obviously it'll be permitted off of what's effective today, but we always suggest in mapping project areas that you guys take a look at the future maps as well. So as we get the data done, we'll certainly communicate with you and share it. Okay, flood risk products will be part of the project too. We will create depth grids and water surface elevation grids for the 1% and 0.2% annual chance floodplain boundaries. FEMA does have percent annual chance grids and percent 30-year chance grids to show the percent chance at any location what you're likely to experience, if you're likely to experience flooding. But with two-dimensional modeling, that looks a little bit different. So I'm not sure what those will look like. And we also can create a changes since last firm layer. Once we get all of the products created, floodplain boundaries, flood risk products, and everything, they will be housed on our interactive map. And the floodplain boundaries will show up under our flood awareness area layer. And then there should be a new layer in the new map for flood risk products. And they should be easier to find on the new map because it should all be under one legend. But this is a good time for me to highlight that we have a new floodplain interactive map that is going to be launched in a couple weeks. It's available now for testing, so feel free to get in and start playing around with it. We've been having some stability issues with our existing map, so the new map should be up and running all the time. I have been promised that it will be like 99.999% of the time it will be operational. If it's not, please let me know because somebody lied. And if you have questions on the new interactive, feel free to reach out to us, or if you're having problems with anything, we're going to be sending some information out about it here in the next couple weeks. So stay tuned for more. This is an example of what the flood risk products will look like. It'll have that gradient information and you click anywhere on the map and you can get your depth or water surface elevation. This one was the depth grid. So at that pinpoint, based on modeling, it's 1/2 foot of flood depth. Okay, so expectations from the project for DNR and FEMA. Obviously, we're going to be here to help walk you through this every step of the way. We can answer any questions that come up, and we'll provide those project status updates to FEMA and to the communities at least once every quarter. We will be doing the hydrologic, hydraulic mapping and floodplain boundary development in-house with the staff that we have here. So if you have questions, you have everybody sitting in the same office that's working on this project. So we will definitely be able to answer any technical questions that you have about the map creation. And then we will present those draft maps for your review at the flood risk review meeting, which we again anticipate to occur about a year from now. FEMA will be available to answer questions as needed, and they also conduct reviews on the data, and they have contract staff that help do some of the reviews and also answer questions that we have, because we're kind of treading into new territory with 2D mapping and getting that onto a regulatory map. So there are still some question marks, and we utilize FEMA's contract support to help us get through this part as well. So expectations for you, provide any information that you have that might be relevant to the project. We will be reaching out to you at some point to make sure that your corporate boundaries and ETJs are all up to date, so that we make sure that we get the right boundaries shown on the future firms. If you have any topographic survey data or any other elevation data that might be useful for our project, you can send that our way. Any existing studies that you have that are fairly recent, that might not have been captured in LiDAR, you can send that to us. I think our LiDAR was flown in, this one's a fairly new set, 20 or 19. It was 19 or 20. We'll include that in our first project update. And then if you have any design or as-built information, especially where we're looking at stream crossings, that would be helpful. High water mark or historical storm data that we can use for calibration is always helpful with 2D modeling as well. And then you will probably be the main point of contact for residents. So if you are getting questions that you feel comfortable answering, please do so. If you don't feel comfortable answering, you can send them to us, and we are more than happy to answer questions at any point. So we are doing something a little different with this project. The reason why this kickoff meeting is virtual is because this is not what we're calling the project kickoff meeting. This is our kickoff with the communities, but we are hosting an open house to try and answer some of the questions for your residents so that you aren't on the hook for doing all of that. It will be this Saturday in Beatrice at the high school, and we're going to have some of our mapping staff, some of our NFIP staff there to answer any questions. We're going to bring our flood table, so if kids are there, they can learn a little bit about flood risk, and we'll be able to just provide whatever information people need. We're trying to just kind of meet people where they're at and figure out what it is that they need to learn from us and what we need to learn from them. So we don't know what this is going to look like, but we're really excited to give it a try. So we hope that we have good attendance. So if you want to recruit some people to come join us Saturday from 10 to 1 at the high school, we would appreciate it. These are the main contacts from DNR for this project. Deanna is the project manager, and then Elijah, your state NFIP coordinator, and I am the division manager. So between the three of us, I think we'd be able to get your questions answered. And that is the end of the presentation. So we can open it up for questions and discussion if anyone has anything.
This is Tyler with the NRD. I was just gonna add one thing and ask a question. I guess we do have, we've still budgeted some money with Turkey Creek. If there's something that we need to send off to our engineers or something for DeWitt area, just keep that in mind. The other question I had was just simple. The flood table, is that the same one or similar to the one that DE would bring around? I think Chuck Chase.
Yep.
You ran that. Okay.
Yep, that is the flood table.
Had an extension agent reach out to me about some other things that she could be teaching in the area, and I mentioned that thing to her, and so I will be sure to say that, hey, come to the high school on Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be running it. So this is Deanna. Come talk to me.
Cool. I will pass it along.
It's fun for us big kids too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
And we are aware of the project in DeWitt. I've been in communication with Scott and with Kent here in our office, so we're aware of that project and Kent knows where we're at. So we'll keep the lines of communication open to make sure that everything gets addressed.
Okay, perfect.
The LiDAR was put in 2018.
Okay. 2018 for LiDAR. So if you have anything newer than 2018, it is not going to show up in our snapshot in time. Any other questions? If not, that's all we had for today. Again, you'll be seeing a letter. That one's sent certified, isn't it, Michelle? Okay, so it'll become coming to you through certified mail on that 30-day review period. Reach out with any questions you have on that.
And it gets sent to the CEO.
Yes, it gets sent to the community CEO and CC'd to the floodplain administrator.
So you might get
And-
questions from your.
And the clerk.
And the clerk. Oh, all of them now. I forgot we added the clerk. So yeah, feel free to send anyone our direction on that. Don't forget about the open house on Saturday. And we're going to mess around with times on some of these open houses. I think we're going to host one in Saline County too, and possibly Fillmore County. So there'll be more opportunities, but we're going to try and see what works best for people. I know coming to a meeting that's out of town after you've gone to work all day is kind of a big ask. So that's why we're trying a Saturday first, but feel free to provide any feedback on what we should try in the future.
So can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
The floodplain manager for Adams, we're a relatively small community. Really, the only job I have as a floodplain manager is to request floodplain elevation requests.
Mhm.
Is there anything like a town like Adams would need to do? Like I heard, Storm, like some of the requests that you made for information, and I just don't really think that applies. Like I don't think Adams, has anything for your project at this time. And I just kind of wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something that you were needing from us or any other information.
Nope, we shouldn't need anything. It's
I didn't
just
think so.
kind of that call to, let communities know that now is the time to provide any of that if you are aware of anything. But no, most of the time we don't get anything. But, in rare instances that there's some development happening in a community, they can provide that information to us to take a look at.
No, I appreciate it. I just wanted to ask in case I missed something. I don't think I did, but I just kind of wanted to tell you, like, I don't have a whole lot to do with, yes, I'm the floodplain administrator, but I don't get very many requests.
Yeah.
We're kind of
And
landlocked as a town and
yeah.
not a whole lot of buildings going on, but I do appreciate your help.
Yeah, and we will, after we get to that second review, the base flood elevation requests will start to reflect the new information. So our agreement with FEMA and Zone A is that we'll use what is the best and newest. So if you see any elevation changes on those in the future, that would be why.
Awesome. Thank you for clearing that up for me.
Yeah. So James, do you have a preference for how far we take the floodway on these 3 tribs?
I would, let's see here, there's lilac. Primarily, I think as long as we go to the first, see, that's lilac. I'm trying to get my roads situated here. Yeah, what where your cursor is at right there, I would think that'd be plenty far.
Okay. Yeah, that seems like it would make sense for a cutoff.
Put all 3 of them there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What you said that was called lilac?
No, that's a one for, is that lilac? I'm trying to think now where our dump is on lilac. Not, I shouldn't say dump. On lilac, so that would be the next.
Okay.
Well,
Well, that's fine.
That's pretty bad. I can't even tell you. Oh, look here.
Okay.
You could just share that too.
It is lilac.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
Yep.
that's lilac. And that would be plenty far, I think, for us for the amount of development that we've seen or anything like that.
Okay. Perfect. Well, we will proceed with that information then. Thank you very much.
Now, and we did have, I wasn't for sure. I'm trying to make sure I see the tributary there. I believe the middle one, we did have JO, we called it the Belvedere corridor study. And I'm
Okay.
not sure if you're aware of that or if they would have anything that would be of use to you or not for that area. We just evaluate it from basically the city limits to the Big Blue. So I don't know if
Okay.
that would be any help whatsoever. We were evaluating the culverts because we had some localized flooding in that middle branch there. And
Okay.
they
Yeah.
want,
I mean, I think that that would be helpful information for us to have. I don't know if it's necessarily something that we would be like incorporating into mapping, but I think it certainly could help us validate, especially if you are having flooding issues on that trip. It would probably highlight some of those areas so that it can help validate our maps too.
we also
Yeah, and we
have,
have survey for all of that, but it would be interesting to look at it for sure.
Yeah.
we also had them evaluate Trib 44 all the way up through town.
Okay.
Okay.
Because we had some complaints about some localized flooding in the middle of town, seeing if there's anything we could do. So we had
Okay.
them evaluate Trib 44 all the way from the Big Blue all the way to the north edge of Beatrice. So
Awesome. And then when we get this modeling put together, we would have the ability to throw in, different culverts and whatnot using some technical assistance funds that we have. So once we get far enough along to share data with you,
the
just
other,
let us know if we need to look at any culvert resizing or anything like that.
Do you
the
know
other,
if those bridges that are getting added, are they going to be a lot bigger, or
I'm sorry, what was that?
the bridges that are getting added? That one on Court Street and you said Highway 44, are they going to be a lot bigger? Or are they going to be similar, or what's do you know the plan?
I think they're going to be similar, but that's why I was asking the question because they're, I believe, in the very preliminary stages. NDOT is
Uh-huh.
looking at those and evaluating those, and I don't know if they'll stay the same elevation, if the what do I call it, opening area is going to be the same, decreased, increased, which I'm sure would have a bit of an impact on the floodplain. So I can't imagine it would decrease. Um, but yeah, they're evaluating those because, especially the West Court Street Bridge, we had questions on because we're getting ready to do our downtown highway relocation project, and those two connect to each other. We want to make sure, oh, you guys are doing a bridge. How does that piece together with our new relocation project? So,
Yeah.
but that was such a big project, we don't, we're under contract, but we haven't even started that yet to give you elevations, let's say of the roads that would be in the floodplain down there. We don't have any of that information yet, so. And that
Okay.
probably won't be done until 29. So, it'll probably be after the fact, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Well, best case, we'll be able to work with DOT and at least figure out a way to keep your maps up to date.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also you, as the floodplain administrator, can request that they do a map change with their bridge replacement too.
Okay. Okay. The other question I had, there's always been discussion, and I've tried to do some research, and it's kind of, I guess it's called, what do you call it, an uncertified levy system? Is that being looked at on just the north side of Highway 136 at the Big Blue Bridge
Mhm.
there? There's
Yeah,
always,
I know what you're talking about. I don't think it shows up in the national levy database, or it does, but it doesn't provide a 1% annual chance protection, but it will at least have the elevation data in the model, and we'll be able to see what
okay.
it looks like once we have the new flows in.
Well, the problem I've had is the farmer to the north of the river, I think, has taken some of the dirt out or opened that area. So I didn't even know if it was certified or not, that I could even do anything
Mhm.
about it. And I think he's taking it out in some of those areas along his field.
Okay, that's good to know. It's not accredited on the current firm, but that's good information for us.
Is it in the floodway?
Yes.
Probably. So we'll probably need to look at that, Elijah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. I could see on your map right there where it would be at. and that would definitely be in the floodway.
Okay.
And I'm not saying he did on purpose, whatever, but I believe there's been some dirt work done back there with,
Mhm.
I don't know, and some tree removal and probably impacted some of that levee area back there.
Okay. I mean, that's helpful because if we were to see what's going on with the levee and, the community wanted to do anything with it, we would need to know that information anyway. I don't
That's
know
always
if
been
FEMA's gonna make us do a levee meeting on those.
It's always been hard for me whether or not to even account that that's a levee there, because City of Beatrice has looked at, do you get rid of that area in there? We're like, no, it adds some protection. So it's kind of like we haven't touched it. So
Yeah. And that makes sense. Because it does do something on the more frequent event.
yeah.
And I've gotten to a place with this model that I can tell you that the mapping is going to be really similar to what it is right now in Beatrice.
Okay.
At least on the Big Blue. We
Yeah.
haven't gotten into the other tributaries yet.
Yeah, the south or the Trib 44 is really a lot of people's questions because we have a development area over there and I know they've had trouble with their ponds and those were created. It's been kind of a mess over there in Flowing Springs area. So
Okay. Well, that's very helpful. Thank you.